Should I do that? Hi, welcome to the first episode of More Bottle Than Talent. I'm Ben Timmons, the part-time racing driver with a chronic case of having more bottle than talent. I wanted to start this YouTube channel as I'm just a regular guy trying to live his dream in the world of motorsport, and I wanted to share with other people that have the same dream what it's like to race, all the things you need to think about, and also just share the journey each step of the way. The series that I'm racing in this year is the Caterham Academy series. It is a series racing Caterhams, funnily enough, which is for novice drivers only, so you can never have raced before, whether that's in motorsport, bikes, cars, whatever it may be. It's for first time racers only. In today's video, I'm going to be discussing our third race or third competitive event of the season, which was at the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. So in today's video, I'm going to talk through the 2 days of testing that we did, which was on the Thursday and Friday, and then qualifying and the race itself, which both took place on Sunday. Now, firstly, building up to the race, I'd had a few days on track, getting used to the car as it had been repaired by the amazing guys over at DPR Motorsport. Basically, I had an issue with the brakes on my car. Even at the race at Snetterton, the rear brakes, for whatever reason, with the wonderful Caterham build quality, weren't necessarily working as well as they should have been, which meant I was locking up, so locking the rear wheels under heavy braking, which is all well and good. It's fine, it's quite fun, but it does turn you into essentially a missile, because it means that you can't stop particularly well, nor can you turn at that point. So it was more a hazard to other drivers around me. So the guys did an amazing job of helping me get that sorted in time for the race weekend at Silverstone. So it meant going into testing on the Thursday at Silverstone, the car was a little bit new. I was still trying to get used to it, see what the setup felt like, see how it handled, what the balance was like especially. So testing on Thursday was open pit lane, which means that at any point throughout the day, between the circuit opening at 9 AM and finishing at 5 PM, you can go out as much or as little as you want and as often as you want. It's a great way of getting a lot of track time. Other test sessions, like we had on the Friday, run in specific times, so it's a timetable that you then stick to throughout the day. So Thursday was the time to really get used to the track, work out your lines, braking points, and ultimately see, what the car felt like, particularly in terms of things like tyre strategy. So on the Thursday, the car felt great. Like I said, I was betting in the new brakes that I had from the team at DPR. But the tyres that I had were shot to absolute bits. In the Caterham Academy series, you run a dedicated tyre. It's only made for the Caterham Academy race series. And it's very versatile, so to speak, but it's deliberately designed to be extremely low grip. What that means is that it teaches novice drivers how to drive the car, how to really understand how the car is moving about, and ultimately the car control that comes with that. What it essentially means is you're driving around in a small, lightweight sports car that is running on tyres like you'd expect on a Ford Transit. My tyres were completely shot to bits, and what that meant was I spent most of my time going sideways. It was great fun. I laughed the whole way around each lap, but it meant I was incredibly slow, which obviously is not the best situation to be in when you are trying to win a competitive race. So most of Thursday was spent just really familiarising myself with the Silverstone circuit. It's only the second time I'd ever been out on that circuit, mainly because it is the most crazily expensive circuit to drive on. But it was an amazing day just spent plodding around, figuring out where I needed to be, what I needed to be doing at each corner, and iron out some of the issues that I'd identified at a previous track day. It threw up a few different adventures. Basically, when you have testing sessions, you are often alongside other cars. So Caterham has a whole spectrum of motorsport series, from the Academy being the baby series that I'm in, all the way up to the 7 Championship as it's called, or the 420s. These cars are lightning fast, they're like GT3 speeds. And it means that very quickly you'll be poodling along on your Sunday drive like we are in the Academy, and the car will just appear out of nowhere and it will scare the life out of you. So that's one thing that was a little bit strange to get used to on the day. I also had a few different adventures. There was a car in one of the higher series, a 270R series, so 2 above the Academy, that overtook me, jumped out in front, and then dumped a load of fuel in front of me. And that sent the car at about 85 miles an hour, almost completely sideways. So I finished my session there and went in to change my pants very quickly before I went back out for the next session. So the Friday test sessions came around. Again, we're in those timetabled sessions here, so you're out for about 30 minutes at a time, not including any red flags, which is when the session will be stopped. Very tough day. It was the hottest day of the year, I think, and of course you're sat in the car with the engine that's chucking out loads of heat, sat in all your fireproof clobber, your helmet, your gloves. So it's a very intense day. It also puts into a whole different, respect of what elite motorsport is like. The guys in Formula One, when they're pounding around at incredible speeds at 200 miles an hour, they are unbelievable athletes. I was poodling around at about 45 miles an hour and I could barely hack it. So those guys are, absolutely phenomenal athletes. Pace-wise, pace felt really good. I think I changed my tyres to be in the better place and the pace was there. So the pace that I was doing was significantly ahead of lap record pace. And the day itself was a little bit slower in terms of conditions, again based on things like the wind and where it was so hot, the grip levels just weren't there. So as Friday finished, I was happy with where I was in terms of pace. I knew I should be at the sharp end of the grid going into Sunday and felt I had everything to play for. So Friday came and went. At the end of Friday I'd racked up a number of repair bills, I guess you would say, which is often the way with motorsport. It's not a cheap hobby, sadly. Had a few issues. Firstly, my windscreen had a very small chip in it, and then a chip that looked like a bullet hole. This is someone in the next category up in the road sport series that had gone off as I was pulling into the pits to finish my session, and a piece of gravel, when they had gone into the gravel track, came out at the speed of light and shattered my windscreen. So that was the first thing that I needed to repair going into the race. Also, in the test sessions, I needed to fix the wing stay, which is essentially the bit that the wing clips onto on the front wing. The wing itself had come off as well, and I'd actually managed to shear the top wishbone, so part of the front suspension. The sausage curbs, as they're called, the red curbs at Silverstone, are extremely tough. And if you are hitting them at full speed, 100 plus miles an hour like we're going at in the Academy, puts an awful lot of load on it. So it meant I'd completely sheared the top wishbone. Most of that I had to get Caterham to fix because I don't have the mechanical ability to do so, but I did fix the wing stay myself, which for anyone who knows me knows that I have zero mechanical ability. I only put my first shelf up, I think, a few months ago, so this for me was the most mechanical thing I've ever done, and actually a benefit of doing the Academy series that you don't really think about, which is learning how the car works and the mechanical side of it as well. So Saturday was a rest day for us in the Academy. Most of the other race series race 2 or sometimes even 3 times across the weekend, whereas where we are novices, we typically race just the once. And for us, that was a real blessing in disguise, I think. On Saturday, the rain came down heavily. Of course, we've been testing on the Thursday and Friday in bone dry, extreme heat, going into a wet track, which lots of people in the Academy haven't ever raced in or driven in even, would have been quite daunting. So for us, it was a near miss, so to speak. And then it was time for the big day. Sunday, race day. The format, we qualify and race on the same day. We have a 15-minute qualifying slot and then a 20-minute race period in the afternoon. Now Silverstone, where it's such a massive track and it's such a busy calendar weekend, they actually put the entire Academy together. Now traditionally the Academy is split into 2 groups, the white group and the green group, with each group having its own leaderboard and essentially its own mini championship. At Silverstone they put those 2 grids together. It's the only time really throughout the whole year where that happens, which means that we had 47 cars on track at once, which is a lot of cars. And that was in both qualifying and the race. So qualifying, I was between a rock and a hard place in terms of what my qualifying strategy was meant to be. You can do one of 2 things really. The first is that you can go for clean air, so to speak, which is where you have no one in the way, no traffic, so you can just pound round, do the laps as you want to, with no one getting in the way. However, where Silverstone is such a long track and so much of that time is spent in long straights, the tow or the slipstream is worth so much time. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, Caterhams are essentially a brick on wheels. They are the most un-aerodynamic car probably that money can buy, which means as soon as you sit behind another Caterham, the additional speed that you will gain is massive. And on a track like Silverstone, that can be the difference between a really good driver being out-qualified by someone that's slightly slower, that's just in the right place behind a different car. So it's a really important strategy to get right. I didn't know what I was going to do with my strategy, and the best strategy that I had was to not have a strategy. So I was in no man's land in the middle of all 47 cars, and I knew that I had to go out and just go straight into attack mode. I knew I had 15 minutes, which when it's about a 2-minute 40 lap isn't a lot of time to get a good lap in. So as soon as the lights went green, as soon as we were out the assembly area, I just went full attack mode. I think I overtook 3 or 4 cars within the first half a lap just to try and make sure I was in a good position to put a lap in. As soon as we crossed the start finish line, I went as hard as I possibly could for about 2 corners, and I immediately spun. Essentially, I just overdrove. I pushed way too hard, way too quick before I probably had the right heat in the tyres, before I had any heat in the brakes. And I also hadn't adjusted for the conditions. Again, in testing, it was super hot, the wind direction was totally different. I just hadn't really taken that into account. I just went back to being super basic and not being calculated with it all. So I spun at Beckett's corner, a very fast S's part of the track, went in backwards into the gravel, and amazingly, I was pushed out by these 2 marshals who were absolute lifesavers, and marshals are all volunteers, so they give up their hard-earned time to help us race. They helped me keep that session going, and I was sat in the car immensely frustrated, thinking I'd ruined my session, I was going to be qualifying at the back of the grid, and also that I'd ruined everyone else's. When you're on a race weekend, having your time red flagged because the session stopped because someone's gone into the gravel was extremely frustrating, and I felt disappointed that I was potentially going to do that to my other racers. Fortunately, like I say, those 2 legends got me out of the gravel and absolutely saved the day. But it meant, headspace-wise, I was in a pretty bad place. I was extremely annoyed at myself for having made a mistake within the first 2 corners of a lap. And I just drove angry, which is never really what you want to be doing. It's not the best mind frame to be in. But fortunately, I went round, and my next full lap, was actually the fastest lap that I did. And it meant that for almost the entirety of the session I held provisional pole position. Matt Larby and Roger put in 2 incredible laps that were quicker than me on their last lap, and they picked me to pole position. I think I had the pace to be pole, or maybe second row. I was on for a personal best lap. On my final lap, I was held up, sadly, by a back marker. But again, that's where the strategy is important. If I hadn't have gone into the gravel, I would have had more time to put that lap in. So we finished qualifying in the morning. We had about 5 hours until our race in the afternoon, which suddenly feels like a lifetime, and you have all this nervous energy that you're waiting to burn. And then we finally got the call to go to the assembly area to get ready to race. Now I have my very own style or way of prepping for the race, which I can go into in a separate video. So I followed my usual routine to try and help me get in the zone, think about my driving, and really think how, what I needed to do to get the job done. We got in our cars, went out onto the grid, did our formation lap, and then I think that was when the occasion really hit me. We were sat on the start-finish straight at Silverstone, underneath the gantry that says Silverstone, about to race on the full Grand Prix circuit. It was, the occasion was honestly magical. It was one of the best memories of my life. We were sat there waiting for the grid to line up, and I could just see in my mirror 47 cars lining up behind me, just Caterhams as far as the eye could see, and it was awesome. Sat there waiting to go. The red lights come on, and then at that point, nothing else matters. You're not really thinking about anything, just waiting for those lights to go out. As soon as those lights went out, I had a great start. Again, at Snetterton, I think that was something that I did really well. And I was second going into the first corner. And at that point, it was just robotic. When I drive, unless I spin, I go into this almost trance-like state. I think people would describe it as a flow that they go into. And it meant, as we were coming down the hangar straight into Stoke Corner, I was leading. So, half a lap in, and I was leading the race. And the race went well for about 11 minutes of the 20 minutes. I was leading for most of it. I felt that I had really good pace, and I felt that in lots of sections of the track, I was the fastest person there. For anyone that knows Silverstone, from Vale, a hard braking zone left-hander, followed by Club, which is a double right-hander. It's an amazing flowing section of the track. From there, all the way through, from Abbey, a fast right-hander, Farm, Village and Loop, which is a technical section, I could see that I was visibly pulling away from the people behind me, which was Tom McEwen, Matt Larby and Roger, who's in the green group. So as we were coming down the Wellington Straight into another technical section of the track, which is Brooklands and Luffield, I had a good gap. I felt confident in the lead, and I threw all of it away in one corner. I got on the power way too early trying to come out of left field, and I was just understeering basically into the gravel, and I then immediately lost 2 positions, which was really frustrating. It was purely driver error, just not patient enough, and essentially everything that I was like before I came into the Academy series. So I'd almost forgotten everything that I'd learned. So going through the next few laps, it was a bit back and forth between myself, Tom, Matt and Roger for the race lead. Lots of people taking the lead, lots of overtakes. Again, you know, I was confident in my pace. I knew that I could win this race. All I needed to do was just keep the clear laps going, make sure to stay out of trouble, not make any mistakes like I'd already done at Luffield. However, I didn't do that. I continued to make mistakes. We're novices. That's what we're there for. We're there to learn. There are a couple of things that I think they flustered me. It was my first time having contact, having someone hit into me from sloppy driving. Ultimately, I got hit up the inside in Cops, which is a fast corner. And then a few more laps went by. Again, back and forth, anywhere between first and third position typically. And then it all came apart. It all fell apart within 30 seconds, within 6 corners. Now, one thing that for some reason I've been struggling with in my Caterham is changing gear, which is probably one of the most basic things that you can do in a manual car. That's how you drive a manual car. So it meant as I was coming out of club, again a fast right-hander, I was in 2nd gear, changed up to 3rd, and the car just bogged down. I hadn't got 3rd gear, I'd gone into 5th. It's the first time that I've ever done that and got the wrong gear. I then was battling to get back into 3rd gear because I was just not right with the clutch. I'd obviously been flustered big time, and then that meant I saw Roger just sailing up the inside of me, just taking that position. And all the while I could see Tom and Matt, my championship rivals, pulling away from me into the distance. So I was frustrated going into the next section. And it also meant I had 2 other white group drivers, Ryan Wilby and Nick Bryant, great drivers, straight on the back of me. So I had not only lost ground to the leaders, I was in this battle for 4th place that I really didn't want to be in. So as we come into Village and Loop, again a slow technical section of the track, Ryan had just misjudged his braking zone and then crashed into the side of me as well. Now again, flustered me, it slowed me down, it knocked me off my line, and again I could just see Tom and Matt pulling into the distance, and I could see this race slipping away from me. So I get straight back on it as hard as I can. We come into Brooklands and Luffield, and I just tried to do too much. I overdrove massively. I went the fastest that I have ever been into that braking zone, and it was like I'd never driven before. I had one hand on the wheel, I don't even know what my left hand was doing or even where it was, and it was just like I was poodling along. And I was poodling along right up until the moment that I spun and was going the wrong way. Probably the most embarrassing part of this is it was at the only grandstand that was completely filled, and it had all my amazing friends and family there that had come to support me. And I could just, the embarrassment, I just wanted to just get out the car and just walk away. But it was heartbreaking. I honestly felt at that moment, I felt everything that I'd worked for over the last few weeks, all the track time that I'd been doing, I'd just thrown away within 30 seconds. I had to wait for Nick and Ryan to pass me so that I could come back onto the track safely. And in fact, I had to wait for about 6 cars to go past because I didn't want to put any of my other fellow racers in danger by coming back on in a dangerous or reckless manner. So I came back on. Lo and behold, I then missed another gear change. I couldn't change from 1st to 2nd gear, and I lost 2-3 more places from cars that were just faster than me at that point. So as I came back on track, I don't even know what position I was in. I think I was in maybe 15th, 16th place at this point. And honestly, I was just so upset at myself for how I'd driven, how I'd thrown away the race lead, more importantly. But I just focused on doing everything that I could to get as high up the grid as I possibly could. I knew that I had good pace still, I knew that I was faster than the cars in front of me, I knew I just needed time and laps to catch up with them. Sadly, I didn't have a lot of that. I had about 7 minutes left of my timer at the point that I spun, so I knew I had 2, maybe 3 laps left until the race was done. And I knew I was never going to be able to catch the leaders unless a miracle happened. I think I made up 2 or 3 positions on that first lap, made up 2 or 3 more going into the second lap, at which point the race, with about 1 minute and 40 left, the race was red flagged. Again, means the race was stopped. Now what that means is that the results get rewound a lap or even 2, I actually don't know the regulations. So it meant the overtakes that I had made didn't count. So in terms of my personal results, it had dropped me down to 8th place in my group and I think 12th place overall. More importantly though, the reason the race was red flagged was because of a massive and a horrific accident involving 3 of the drivers in our group. 2 of which are very good, personal friends. The accident was horrible, and I think most importantly, each of them is safe and well, and that's the only thing that we could hope for in that event. And it was absolutely the right thing for the race to be stopped. I only wish the race had been stopped earlier to ensure that everyone was as safe as possible. So as we came into Parc Fermé, of course we were all extremely worried about what had happened on track involving those other drivers. I'm not going to show any footage or anything because I think it's not fair on those guys, and it's not for everyone to see. But we came into Parc Fermé, and selfishly, I was absolutely devastated. I was really, really upset with how I'd driven throughout the whole day, really. So you can only imagine my sheer excitement when the very lovely Sam from Caterham Media Crew comes over to me to interview me. At this point, I didn't want to talk to anyone, let alone to a camera. And for anyone who knows me, my temperament isn't the best trait about me. Of course there's a very long list of amazing traits, but my temperament and my patience probably isn't high amongst them. So that was a little bit, caught me off guard. Having watched the live stream back, it was very nice that how calm I was in the interview was called out. Again, like I said, my temperament is not great, so if anything, it's a sign that I've matured. So Mum, Dad, hopefully you'll be proud of me now. So having finished 8th, like I said, I was extremely upset. I honestly truly felt this race was mine to lose. There's lots of fast drivers in our group. Tom and Matt especially are extremely fast drivers. I knew that I'd have my work cut out for them, but I felt for the most part in that race, I felt I had the measure of it. Obviously not to be, it's a great lesson to take away, and it's been really quite humbling, I guess, in terms of what we're trying to learn and what we're trying to do. Most of all, it was just a phenomenal experience to have the opportunity to race on the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit 2 weeks before the Formula 1 boys are there was just amazing, and like I said, absolutely magical, and something that will always stay with me. So extremely grateful to have had that opportunity. Well done to who did win, which was Matt Larby in the white group and Roger in the green group, especially Roger. He was so fast in his group and has been really quite dominating in that group, so well done to both of them. And most importantly, I'm so relieved that all of the drivers that were involved in accidents are safe and well. It's the most important thing. It's a real community within the Caterham Academy, within the Caterham Road, race series itself. So that's the most important thing to have come out from the weekend. However, I am on the path for redemption going into Donington Park. I need a win. I need to get some points. I need to catch Tom and Matt. I'm only 1 point clear of 4th place. So I'm 3rd at the moment in the championship. I need to make sure I still put the pressure on Tom and Matt. So Donington Park, coming for you. Of course, this is the first episode of More Bottom Than Talent, so if there's anything that you want me to talk about, particularly in the videos, whether that's about racing, the logistics, the cost even, whatever it might be, please let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next one.
No, what's that way?
Bye.